attention.
I think it's my job to deal with the elephant in the room, which a few people mentioned earlier, and I was glad that you raised that. Thank you, Martin. Because what's really going on in media? Not much. It's been quiet, actually. We're a management consultancy, essentially, that specializes in media and advertising. As you might imagine, it's been a busy few years, but particularly a busy last kind of 7 or 8 days, and I'll come on to talk about some of the bigger impacts of media and questions over trust and transparency that you may be aware of. The first thing I should say first off is thank you to Julian and the Network One team and everybody for putting this on, because, and not least for allowing me to come and share, but also this is a fantastic time to be independent, as I'm sure you probably all agree. We're an independent company. Just the ability to provide inspiration in an objective and trusted way is fantastic, and what a great forum. So congratulations and thank you for doing that. ID Comms, as I say, is a management consulting business. We specialize in media. And this is our proposition to advertisers. We only work with brands. We're lucky to work with some of the world's leading advertisers. We're truly independent, and we are their partners in media change. And you'll know that the media industry has undergone incredible change over the last decade. This is my kind of hypothesis for you today, is that the value of independent, and I'm talking about media agencies, but the value of independence in agencies will increase as the market differentiates. And I'll come on to kind of break that down and explain what I mean. And we'll revisit that at the end, and you can tell me whether you think that's a hypothesis delivered. So let's just break that down. So independence, what does independence mean when you talk about media agencies? Well, it's a freedom that you have, freedom of control that you have in your own businesses. But actually independence of thought within media is really, really important. I think I think it was Amanda on the panel earlier, talked about agencies perhaps being tempted to make recommendations that serve their own business interests, perhaps sometimes more than the client's interest. So independence and objectivity is obviously critical, and that has a direct impact on the value that you can provide to your advertiser clients. It's also an incredibly powerful word in media: freedom from control, influence, support. And it's more important now than it's ever been in media. I was a lawyer. I finished law school, so I take a passing interest in law and regulation, and I love contracts and things like that. So I was interested from a kind of lawyer's perspective. Where has independence been tested? The definition of independence been tested. And one of the most interesting examples of that is in the financial services industry. So if you're familiar with, you may not be familiar with the Retail Distribution Review, perhaps, that happened in 2012, but very exciting, I'm going to tell you all about it. And you might wonder why it's relevant to our discussion today, and hopefully that will become clear. So in 2002, new regulation in the UK needed to make a differentiation, or actually a definition, of what it means to be an independent financial advisor. So an independent financial advisor, or an IFA, as they became known, was the go-to person if you really wanted to buy a financial product as an individual. So if you wanted to invest, if you wanted a mortgage or invest in a pension, things like that. And as the name suggests, obviously they were intended to be and give you independent advice, right, on your financial investments. But the Retail Distribution Review was really prompted by the fact that majority of independent financial advisors were actually not independent at all, because a lot of them were earning their income from the product provider. So these are the financial institutions that offer mortgages or pensions, things like that, were paying commission and very, very valuable jollies. And I've spoken in the last few weeks, because this is a point of interest, I've spoken to quite a lot of IFAs, and they all recounted the amazing trips and restaurants and holidays that they went on, courtesy of the big financial institutions, which, whilst they all agree that the the review was good news for the industry, they all miss, obviously, their golf trips, and everybody commented that their golf handicap had gone down in the last 4 years. So independent financial advisors were selling products or making recommendations to customers, us, with what they called a bundled fee. So you'd pay a fixed percentage, and then somewhere in the terms and conditions at the back of that, it may break it down and may disclose what the financial advisor may have been making from the provider side, okay? So it's not really in the customer's interest. They had no visibility of what incentives were being paid to the IFA to recommend certain products. And if you're a customer and you go to somebody called an independent financial advisor, you expect independent advice, and you weren't getting that. Of course, that affected their independence. So what this review did, actually, is it told IFAs that they had to differentiate, and they had to be, by legal definition, either independent or restricted. And independent meant that they could not earn any income from the provider side, but had to be paid purely on a fee by the customer based on what that customer was prepared to pay for that advice. And there are clear compliance rules on how they're allowed to present to the customer what they are going to charge, okay? The alternative, and you had to designate whether you wanted to be independent or whether you wanted to be restricted as a financial advisor. As a restricted financial advisor, you could recommend, you could work and earn money from certain providers, okay? And the obligations of independent was that they are not allowed to receive commission. They are obliged to review and know or offer any suitable product in the marketplace. They have to give, and this is in the legislation, they have to give fair, unbiased, and unrestricted advice. Annually, they have to make a statement of professional standing. So they have to declare every single year to a regulatory body, which is the FCA, Financial Conduct Authority, which is a government organisation here. They have to assert their independence every year. And then they are highly regulated, and there's huge kind of compliance requirements of IFAs now. But of course, the benefit there was to the consumer. So it gave greater transparency to a customer of actually what was going on, and that gives confidence, right, from a customer's perspective, that you're getting the right advice and you know what you're paying for that advice. The implications are actually that there's a lot of the IFAs that I spoke to said that there's a lot of administrative chores they now have to do in terms of compliance. But the good thing about that, actually, has been, whilst it's more time for them, it's got rid of what lots of them called the rogue element, which was the IFAs who were perhaps not operating wholly in the interests of their clients. And actually, a lot of those moved on, and they've gone into different parts of financial services or maybe into different industries because they don't want to take on the administrative responsibility of complying with the FCA, okay? So it's actually improved the quality of the individuals in amongst IFAs. And the other thing which was really surprising to me, because I thought, well, as soon as you tell, I mean, much like Phil's just described, right? As soon as you tell a customer with more clarity, really the price, like what goes into the sausage, it looks more expensive. It was the first problem. And also they're going to have to spend much more time on the compliance stuff. And so that's got to affect their profitability. But actually every single IFA said that they are more successful since regulation, and revenues are higher and profits are higher. Really interesting. Okay, so what does it mean? So that's independence, just as a kind of an example, the importance of independence. What does agency mean? This is from a friend of a friend who's a judge. We asked them actually what they thought the definition was in this context of an agent. An agent is not permitted to make an undisclosed profit from its actions on behalf of the principal. Only one exception is maybe where there's a contractual agreement that is allowed, that they are allowed to do so, okay? So given that, which way now for media? Like in the IFA market, which I just described. Right now, there is a problem with trust and transparency, particularly in media agencies, as a few of you have referenced on an earlier panel as well. Earlier this year, we conducted a piece of research, my only two sciencey kind of slides. This one, we asked 150 marketers from around the world. We asked also opinion of agencies and procurement. Two headlines. One is that the overwhelming majority of respondents believe that trust is a really important and a key principle of kind of business relationships and will deliver stronger marketing performance. Another interesting part of the report and the results that we found was that, I don't know if you can read these, but the top line here, how a media agency manages rebates, their relationships with media vendors. So in that IFA example, their relationship with the provider of media in this case, and how agency kind of buying deals work. These were the highest ranked concerns amongst marketers of things that would influence, or elements of transparency that would influence the trust in their media agency. So clearly it's a really commercial problem, this lack of trust, and it comes from transparency. Okay, so let's get on to the elephant. You may or may not know, the ANA is the Association of National Advertisers, formed in 1910. It's the largest single marketer trade body, I think, in the world, with 1,000 members, represents $300 billion of annual marketing spend in the US. And it's the voice of advertisers in America. We're going to do some little pop quiz. Anybody know who this man is? It's a very important man. This guy is called John Mandel. John Mandel is the ex-CEO of Mediacom, media agency in the US. He left about 10 years ago. In March 2015, John Mandel stood up in front of a crowd about double this size at an ANA conference in Florida in the US, and perhaps for the first time publicly made a declaration on the ANA stage that the US media market was a rebate market. Therefore, it was an independent market, potentially, by that test. What that triggered was a whole succession of different events, which I'm just going to walk you through as a quick potted history. This man, anybody know who this is? Erwin Schrödinger. Anybody's heard of Schrödinger's cat test? Schrödinger theory was that if you put a cat into a box and you leave it alone and you can't see the cat, at some point it may or may not die, but at any given moment you were not aware whether the cat was dead or alive, and so therefore it was potentially both at the same time. The reason I'm telling you this is because it has a great parallel to the narrative around rebate practice in the US. Depending on who you ask, people will either tell you that the US is an entire rebate market and it's been going on for years, or people will tell you that it absolutely doesn't exist. So we were faced at a point until John Mandel where we believed both cases to be true, and we were unsure why. And the ANA very rightly decided to tackle this problem. This gentleman is called Bob Liodice. He's the president and CEO of the ANA. He really is the voice of advertisers in the US, and he said that they would launch an investigation into rebate practice in the US to demystify their language, give a perspective on these non-transparent behaviors, and understand really what was going on. Anybody know this man? This is Erwin Gottlieb. Erwin Gottlieb is the global CEO of Group M, so really the people call him the godfather of media, which sounds kind of intimidating, but he is probably the most senior and kind of widely known and respected media executive in the world. Controls companies which obviously manage billions and billions of dollars of advertising investment. At a conference I attended in Phoenix in May last year, Bob interviewed Erwin. They talked about this transparency issue, Erwin's words, and he was correctly right, I think, that there needs to be a building of mutual trust, better trust and understanding between the advertiser and the agency when it comes to these kind of things. So what the ANA did is that they launched a search they issued an RFP to find a firm, an external independent firm, that could look into this practice and open Schrodinger's box, you might ask. That happened in the summer. We tendered for it. There were 30 companies, I think, that tendered for it. We were one of the 29 that didn't win it. Well, but the people that did get it, which I was fascinated to hear, was a company called K2 Intelligence. These gentlemen are father and son. They're called the Krolls. They founded Kroll, which is a corporate investigations firm, often used by companies looking to make business deals in untransparent markets around the world. So they do a lot of investigations into, oil markets and things like that on behalf of large corporations. They were brought in. They employ, ex-FBI kind of negotiators and investigators and guys from the CIA and things like that. These are kind of hardcore investigation firm. So they won this tender. It was their job to shine a light on rebate practice in the US. They interviewed about 160 people. I was one of them. I went to New York and met with, not these guys, but their team, which I was expecting to feel a little bit like this. Although I'm fully independent, have nothing to hide, but they were interested in validating and getting more information about some of the experiences that we've had working with advertisers and agencies. It turns out it was just like meeting your bank manager, and they were very polite and very nice. There was no interrogation happened at all. So that's been going on for the last kind of 9 months or so. Just in May, a month or so ago, I was in this beautiful place, Boca Raton in Florida, for the ANA's 2016 conference. The anticipation was that at this conference that they would then present the results of the K2 investigation. They didn't do that. It's much to everybody's disappointment because simply the report wasn't ready. But last week, Tuesday, June the 7th, K2 published a 58-page report called An Independent Study of Media Transparency in the US Advertising. I recommend that you read it because it's kind of interesting. Just read the first 5 or 6 pages. But it declared there is non-transparent practice in the US market, and they called it pervasive based on their investigation. It wasn't limited to any type of media agency. It was, in their words, all types, the full spectrum of agency. Not all agencies, but all types of agency. It wasn't just operating in the fringes of kind of some nascent digital technologies or dealings. They found evidence of rebate or non-transparent practice in TV, radio, outdoor, as well as digital. And one of the lead investigators from K2 on a call that we had, a briefing call we had with them, said agencies had failed a fiduciary duty. So agencies, of course, have said that they operate within the boundaries of their contract, which I think is true. Lots of people. In the last 7 days, we've spoken like back to back to many, many marketers around the world looking for answers and guidance on this stuff. Also spoken to a lot of analysts. We do a lot of work with investment analysts as well, and their most common questions are, is anyone going to go to prison? Answer is probably no, because there's no contractual breach probably in this. Secondly, they keep saying to us, is this going to trigger a massive wave of global media reviews? I think the answer is no for the moment, but probably 2017 maybe. So there's a contractual obligation, but K2's assertion was that there's a fiduciary duty that you have to your clients, and that had been failed in a large way. The agency community responded quite predictably, perhaps, to initially just try and discredit the report. And I understand completely their perspective. Anybody know who this man is? Yeah. So his words, uncomfortably for him, on the 8th of June, on Wednesday the 8th of June, was the WPP annual general meeting. And Paul Martin had to stand up and defend his £70 million annual pay deal to his shareholders. That was kind of bumpy, but of course he got asked about this report, and these were his words from the AGM. It's in no way independent, it's one-sided. I agree with his approach that the agencies are kind of under attack and he's got to defend that. The only way you can do that is perhaps call into question the validity of the report itself. I think it's wrong to say it's one-sided. He went on to say that no holding companies like WPP had contributed to the report, so therefore it was one-sided. But he didn't point out that they were all invited to participate, but all declined. And so inevitably, it doesn't represent the interest, perhaps, of a company like WPP. This lady is Nancy Hill. Nancy is the CEO of an organization called the 4As. The 4As are the trade body in the US representing agency interests. They are at war with the ANA, it's fair to say right now. The narrative from both sides is making reference to the Cold War in public, which is not helpful. But Nancy said the report is anonymous, inconclusive, and one-sided, so the same thing. Is this the end? No, this is the start. This is the beginning of something, not the end of something. We've learnt, we have information now. The parallel that we keep talking about in the last 7 days is that this is a bit like the Panama Papers, with stuff that we perhaps suspected that might be happening. We weren't really able to pass a judgment or not. But now we've got some fact, okay? And our challenge to our clients that we work with and to marketers around the world is this is the beginning, action needed. If you wanted to dig into that, we've written a lot about the impact of that. Actually, this morning, I think we've just launched, hopefully somebody in my team has sent this out today while I'm here, is what we call the Post-K2 Media Manifesto, which is a set of principles for marketers in this. Some of you might have seen, we do a weekly vlog as well, which is on YouTube, you can find called Media Snack, or look for the hashtag RebateGate, which we've been posting everything against. So what we need, when all the rhetoric is so aggressive at the moment, is actually what we want as bridge builders. We need clients, advertisers, and agencies on both sides to start to rebuild that trust, that failing trust and transparency. And this is the start point. I think there's goodwill on both sides to take this insight and make more of it. The question for next week is, can we talk about this? So I'm going to Cannes on Sunday. It will be interesting. Obviously, this will be a big part of discussion, certainly amongst the executives from media agencies and some senior clients. We've already heard from a lot of advertisers that they are actually setting up meetings with their agency to tackle these questions in Cannes, because they're all going to be there. So that'll be kind of interesting, doing that on the top of a $100 million yacht, maybe. But the good thing that Cannes offers on this debate is that it takes people out of the mindset of their day job. It gets people together in perhaps more of a collaborative spirit without the pressures, without the kind of daily pressures. And hopefully something good will come of that. So I think I'm looking forward to good ideas coming out of Cannes. And the focus from our perspective is, I'm always with Warren, particularly when he says these things. Price is what you pay, value is what you get. That's everything you need to know about the global media market in one very clever sentence from Mr. Buffett. The obsession, we have had an obsession as an industry on the price of media and the discount achievable on media, and we have to change that conversation to understand the value of media, the impact it has, the outcome it has for the advertiser's business. If we can do that, we get rid of all of the kind of bad conversation. It takes a lot of change in behavior from a marketer's side to be able to do that, and also to be able to hire and work with a media agency based on a value proposition, not based on a price and a discount. I was at a conference a few weeks ago called Media 360, which is a UK conference for the media industry. And a gentleman called Andrew Mortimer, who's head of media at Sky, broadcaster in the UK. They are the largest advertiser in the UK by a mile. They spend about £200 million a year on media in the UK. And that's Andrew's and his team's responsibility. And they're a broadcaster, they're a response-driven advertiser, they're a high-performance digital marketer. You wouldn't necessarily expect Andrew or Sky to perhaps come out with this kind of sentence, but he said this, and it's brilliant. He said, the craft of media planning has been lost to the obsession of metrics. We've got to get back to the craft of media that we've lost, really through the obsession of price and discount. Because what we're doing as advertisers is buying cheaper and cheaper media, thinking that is success. But it's ceasing to drive business in the way that it should do. What I always like to say is that we've outsourced to algorithm and given up responsibility of media's contribution to their marketing mix, and I think that's really sad. We will get that back. And perhaps this is the point now. This is a point where we need, much like the financial services markets, we need a point of differentiation. I think today or tomorrow, if you pick up a copy of Campaign in the UK, I wrote a piece in this week's edition calling for clearer differentiation of media agencies around the world. We can either be trusted advisors, like independent financial advisors, or we can be more commodity suppliers. Both are legitimate businesses. There's nothing untoward or wrong with being this on this side. It's just a different business model. What's important is the line in the middle. We need to be able to distinguish one model from another. Advertisers cannot do that right now. If you're a trusted advisor, you act as agent in the definition of working in the interests of the client. You can be transparent. You must be transparent. You should be paid a fee. It doesn't have to be a fee for talent necessarily. That's a long discussion. But you need to pay for what you want from an agency. And your equation should be focused on value, much like Warren Buffett's good advice. Alternatively, you could see media as a commodity. It's perfectly legitimate to do that if you're focusing on more on really measurable outcomes. Then you can just look at an ROI of what you spend on media and what it does, and frankly, you may not care what media gets bought or what your agency makes, or in fact, even what they're recommending in the between those two poles. It's a different model. But it does give us, and it will allow customers, in this case advertisers, to be able to differentiate the market. Okay? So you guys, as independents, and those of you that are independent media agencies, this is an exciting time to be independent. It's never been more valuable. Independence has never been more valuable in media than it is right now. And I think the value of independent media agencies, you guys, will increase as that market increasingly differentiates. That's it. Thank you.